Let's do pledge.
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Yeah. All right, so let's move on to community. And so members of the audience are welcome to address the Board of Trustees at this time regarding items not listed on the agenda. The trustees may ask questions for clarity, but cannot take action on these matters. Such matters may be placed on a future agenda according to law. The president may limit the time to 3 minutes for each speaker.
We have a microphone there and a podium there.
Okay. Yes. Oh, okay. Do you have a microphone?
Is this for public comment about items not on the agenda?
Yeah.
Public comments for items not on the agenda.
So not community content. Right?
We got to open with the basic business, so people, if they have something to say, they have their
Yeah,
opportunity.
so then, if there's any on the agenda.
Like a public phone, go over here, like phone.
So it's all one. This one. Okay. Yeah. Or is it for them? You can just.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and do any public comment at this point in time. So if you have a public comment
We'll do it after.
Okay.
for the matters that are on the agenda, now would be the moment to do that.
So there's no one for not on the agenda?
Yeah, right now,
Right now.
another one.
Oh,
Right.
I'll do one for not on the agenda, then I'll do another one. Good evening. I just wanted to make a real quick comment about our experience so far this year with the 3 kids we have in the district. And I just want to say that our staff and teachers are absolutely spectacular. And I just wanted to say that. They're outstanding, best teachers in the county. So thank you very much for that.
Right. Okay. Hey, my name is Lynn Ventilib, and I have a middle school student and a second grade student, and I'm an in-district mom, and I haven't been to a meeting before because I'm probably a majority of the in-district moms who's lazy and has too many things on her plate. And so I haven't been able to come and engage, but I've tried to look on the website and understand exactly what's happening. I don't know if I still really do. I sent an email to the board. I didn't get any acknowledgement, and I looked at meeting minutes, and I didn't look like it had been, my message had been read aloud. So I don't know why that would be. But my main idea or thing that keeps coming back to me is that I'm so impressed with all the outcomes that we do currently have at the district. And I've been floored by all the teachers that my kids have had. I also work in youth development. I work in funding. My job is the executive director for a local foundation. And I spend a lot of time thinking about how kids succeed and how we can best support our kids. And I would just feel like the conversation has been a lot about money connected to outcomes, or somehow that money creates these outcomes, which we as a district have proven that it doesn't. So we're at the lowest level of funding, yet we're at the highest levels of outcomes. So I just hope that the board can look a little bit more at what's going to be best for our kids, rather than what is going to maximize our dollar per student, because dollar per student does not equal excellent educational outcomes. And so I have been always thinking about this as a control issue. So the idea of just blanketly stopping interdistrict transfers when we have a tool in our skill belt to be able to use the wonderful interdistrict transfer families as a way to even out our enrollment, as a tool to keep our academic community robust. I love that my son has a sixth grade basketball team. I don't think they would have that if we had to get rid of all of our interdistrict transfers. I love that my daughter has 3 classes that she can have friends from different places. And I want that for my children. And so as an in-district mom, I would prefer to have the board use their interdistrict transfers as a tool in their tool belt to control the academic environment of our school for the best outcomes. I would like you to take the whatever financial thing to do to get the most finances in for our school. I do not see them as connected. And I have felt like the conversation connecting those two has been wildly unhelpful. We have incredible outcomes. Let's keep those. If you take half of my kids' friends away and half of their opportunities away, they will not have as great of outcomes. So I'm just hoping that the board can look at what's best for our kids, our students, for outcomes, not just dollars. Get all the dollars, but work on student outcomes. And that's my focus. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Scott, Viola. This is for items not on the agenda, correct?
Either or.
Either
The
one.
whole shebang.
Thank you. Thank you for having to make the hard decisions. It's not easy. And that's the thing. Thank you for making the hard decisions. Well, we all know that there are things that we can't all agree on, but hey, we're here. So, civility is always good. And like I said, the last meeting, that podium right there says 1868. And like I also said, I don't like to have people look at my back, but that podium says 1868. These people have looked at the numbers, agree or disagree. The numbers show that what I see, that in 2030, if you still want to have a school system and not a RAP, 1868 to 2030 out there, just let them do their job. Because they do a good job. So thank you. Appreciate it. Hey, Merry Christmas, everybody. You can say that too, so.
Good evening. I've been a community member for many years here. My kids started school in this district back in the 90s. And through these years, I've seen a lot of changes, a lot of things that were taken away that were for free. It started with the school bus program. It was for free. Now we pay for it. Then we had the music program. That's no longer being funded by the school. We have to subsidize it through the WOOF program. Same thing with the arts. So I've seen through 28 years of how our community has always come together and somehow supported the things that were taken away. We have even put in a ball field for the kids in our community to play ball and enjoy our sports. And here we are as a community still supporting. Now, I understand that things are real bleak. And I know that in a few years, we might not be here. I trust that your judgment and you're looking at all the options that have been put before you with the finances that you've looked at. This is not an emotional decision. This is a financial decision. And I think that at some point, you got to put your big pants on and make some tough decisions. Now, whatever that's going to be, but I'm telling you, we have a community that has been here to help support, but it's starting to get like the well is running dry. I think that we have always been told that if we don't have the out-of-district transfer kids, we're not going to be able to afford this or not be able to afford that. But now that's not the case. So I haven't been to any of these meetings before, but what I have found out is disturbing. And it's concerning to me because we, our district, vote for you. And I just wonder, like, how far along the river did you see the cliff? Could this have been done earlier where we're not at this point? So sometimes we're going to have to make hard decisions. And I hope that you, and I trust that you have done your due diligence with the finances and everything else. And I just appreciate this time, you listening, that I have seen this decline. And I hope that we can continue with our school district because it is a wonderful place to raise kids. Thank you.
Chris, is it both?
It's both, the whole
Can
shebang.
I say one more thing?
Answer yes.
Good evening again. Talk about what's on the agenda and the interdistrict transfer situation. And something I think that is very real about our district here is that I don't know the facts for sure on this, but I would imagine with the cost of homes out here, the amount of children that are in the district to come to school has declined, which is valid here. But I also think something that we need to look at real, and I'm not saying this to be mean or be negative, but I think that there's a lot of kids that live in the district that don't go to school in this district because they don't believe that the district is providing the education that we want and deserve. And it's not necessarily the education, but the formats in which it's being put forward. I believe that there's a solution. I'm working on a solution. And it's never been presented here. And the only presentation is, that I've seen here, the couple that have been presented have been incomplete. And quite honestly, incompetent when it comes to the numbers and the actual traction of it, the financial numbers, the permitting processes, all the different things that go in to these solutions have been incomplete. And it doesn't even give us parents, and it's so like, oh, it's a done deal. And then I'm looking at it, it's like, well, you want to rent out the school to the county, but it's upside down. You're going to lose money every year because you didn't factor the cost of portables and permits and all the things that go into it, insurance, all these different things. And there is a solution, and it doesn't require that we fire half the teachers or a chunk of the teachers and reduce down to where we give our prized this time like school, Tobacco Washington Union. And I would just say I'm definitely against the state funded school packets and interdistrict transfer, whether or not my kids continue to go to school here or not, depending on, our future as a family. But this is a special district. And I would say that we need to turn inward and look at what have we done wrong to turn people away and realize there's a solution that saves all the teachers and saves the budget of this school, district, And I would just say, give it a couple of months. There's a solution and it's going to be presented and I'll present it. So thank you very much.
Any more public comment?
Hello. My name is Victoria. I have a daughter who is in first grade at Toro, and I'm an interdistrict mom. And I understand that you're making a really, really hard decision, and I respect that completely. I do want to share that in addition to myself, I have 3 people in the district. So I have 2 sisters and a niece. None of them will ever have children that actually go to Toro. And so I feel like I'm speaking on behalf of them as well, because they've shared their feelings and their input in members and this decision. And unfortunately, the feedback that I've received from them and people within their neighborhoods is that if they do have a grandchild or a niece or a nephew or somebody who they are supporting to go to this school, and all of a sudden the doors are being closed on them as well. Because that's their family member who my sisters provide after school care for my daughter. My mom picks her up, takes them to one of my sisters. That's how we've kind of made it through the first couple of years of my daughter's education. We love the school. We're very, very invested in the school. We want to be a part of this community, you know, whether that's time, whether that's giving to different fundraisers to make sure that our students have the arts, have the soccer, whatever it is, we're willing to do that. But we also want you to accept our daughter and to not sit there as a community and say, well, you know, your family members live in this community, but their grandchild or niece or nephew isn't welcome. And I also want you to think about what that does to that child. Because I'm going to have to go home and tell my daughter, by the way, we're going to have to look at a new school and explain to her why. And so I think that that's a really important thing to think about what we're doing to the other students, relationships that they've built so far, especially as my daughter's in first grade, but I think about kids in middle school and what this would do to them, and all of a sudden having them, you know, come home and you're having to explain to them why they can't come back to this district. I think that's a really big thing. And yes, I understand the funds, but I also think that it's really important to think about how this impacts each of the students in this decision. So thank you very much.
At this point, we do have one message that was emailed to us, and we're going to have that read aloud here.
Okay. This message was asked to be entered into the record, so I'll read it aloud. Dear members of the WUSD Board of Trustees, my name is Audrey Gray, and I'm a parent of a Toro Park third grader who has been attending Toro Park since he was in kindergarten. We currently live within the WUSD boundary with no plans to move. I first want to express my appreciation for the board as elected officials who participate on their own time with little to no compensation. As an employee of local government for 24 years in the field of finance and human resources, I can empathize with the difficult decision before you this evening. However, I need to voice my opinion that I am in complete opposition for the district to move to the community-funded model, at least not all at once. Although my daughter will remain in WUSD, the friends that she has made in the 4 years she has been there will not. For whatever reason, I would say that approximately 90% of my daughter's closest friends are interdistrict transfer students. These are friends that make her feel safe and included on a daily basis, which allows her to focus on learning. My daughter has so much joy when she attends school, and a good reason for that is because of the friendships that she has cultivated the past 4 years. The fact that there is a possibility that those friends will no longer be by her side next year crushes my heart. I do believe that children are resilient, but there are going to be plenty of life experiences that she'll need to be resilient for, and I just don't see this as being something I want to have her overcome at this moment in time. I'm frustrated that this is happening. I also understand that we do not want to keep the yo-yo happening, as that has not been a pleasant experience this year. But I do implore the Board of Trustees to make a decision that takes care of all of the students that have been a part of WUSD family for so many years. I also recognize that our dwindling budget requires some type of solution. As I mentioned above, I've been responsible for city budgets for many years, so I understand the fiscal responsibility you all are facing. However, I truly believe that there must be a solution that does not impact the well-being of the students, both in-district and out-of-district students who just want to be with their friends that bring them joy, happiness, and feel safe and accepted, and allows them to thrive. 40% of our student base will be entering brand new schools, losing the safety and connection that they have had their entire elementary education. I do truly believe that a tiered process or grandfathering process would be the most beneficial to all families who have been a part of your lives for so many years. I believe this board and the district have responsibility to all of the students and families to find a solution that does not implode every safe thing they currently know when it comes to their education. Sincerely, Audrey Gray.
Thank you very much for your opinions and your comments tonight. It's been really good to hear from everybody over the last couple of months. We've read all of your emails. We've heard from all of you. Thank you very much for all of your comments we've been providing with us. They've been really helpful. Lots of good questions, lots of good insights that we've had along the way. So thank you everyone for being involved. At this point, we're going to move on into the action items. Number one was the approval of an elimination of your district transfer enrollment for purposes of transitioning the district to a community-funded revenue model. At this point, we're going to take a moment to discuss amongst ourselves and to work through our ideas and vote. So, I do believe, John, you had a few things you wanted to say through.
I'd like to hear other board members before I speak. That's okay.
All right, so just as a quick recap of what brought us here over the last few years, we have been.
Mine might take a little bit. I wanted to put my thoughts out there.
Okay.
If that's okay, it may take a little bit, but not a lot.
That's okay.
And then maybe we do some breaks in between if somebody has a point they want to interject or call me out on or support.
Of course.
Okay.
Do you need a microphone?
No.
Just checking.
All right. So, yeah, I think I say thank you to all the input we're getting at every meeting, and I truly mean it because it's a public forum. These are all our kids. My kids, they've all gone through this district, and the only reason I'm on the board was what my kids were going through, and I feel like it can continue to help now. But now I'm the old guy. I've been here since 2012 when my kids were young. They all went through it, right? And so I've always made my decisions kid-centric. And I feel like we need there's people that haven't been to a board meeting yet, and are having opinions about things. And I appreciate you being here now, but there's going to be some information that we can talk about here that I think paints the picture of where do we come from and how did we get here and where do we go from here. So I'm going to start with history of our district that I know it. I didn't go to this district when I was a kid. Hope is a Homer. She's been here her whole life.
No, I grew up in this district. I moved away for 20 years and then came back.
But as a kid, you attended the districts.
I kindergarten through 8th grade, and my dad was on the school board.
That's awesome. What did the school look like back then?
We had 2 classes per grade level.
2 classes per grade. So if you translate that out, it's similar to where we would go if we just stuck with our current population. It would be similar. So if we just kind of go over history from what I know. So in the late 60s, Toro Park Estates was built. And then it continued to build when I was riding my bike from town on the highway, hoping I wouldn't get hit to go ride in the hills of Toro Park. Toro County Park opened in 1971. I remember waiting in an hour-long line to turn left to go to Toro Park when I was a kid on a 2-lane road. In the late 70s, Toro Park was built, and it was a special needs school only. And then when that shifted, our population of students grew. So maybe we went from 400, and we continued to decline because now we had 3 schools. There were vestiges of that left over into the 80s and 90s as we climbed. Our peak enrollment was somewhere around 09, 010, and we almost hit 1,000 students. So we almost doubled our population. And at that time, I think we were still seeing some increases from our district families and for sure inter-district families. And that percentage has popped in and out of 30% to 40+% for inter-district as we've been doing that. But at that time, we had, let's just say we had 1,000 students. And so when my kids first got here, we had 1,000 students. And in 2008, for everybody that was around and paying taxes, that was a terrible year for the state. And we had budget deficits that were scary. They took $2 billion out of our funds for the school that year. And we were like bankrupt. Well, I'll get into the funding sources for that. But if you just kind of keep rolling from there at peak enrollment, we've been declining enrollment since then. 2010, 2020, COVID, terrible. We went off a cliff. We were in the 800s, and I think we landed at 700 after COVID. And I just really appreciate everyone's support and community to get through that. That was terrible. So now we get through COVID and we're settled in somewhere around 740, and we have 350 plus inter-district students that are making that up. So from a history standpoint, that's kind of where we used to be to where we're at right now. We kind of hit this peak. The Toro Park development spiked us when we were able to use Toro Park for the local families, and now we're trending back down. Any thoughts on that part of the discussion? I brought this up earlier this year about declining enrollment. So there's generationally, there's a big change out there, right? You know, I'm a Gen Xer. The baby boomers are out there. My mom was the greatest generation. And every one of those has an aspect about the culture and their style and the amount of kids they had. The boomers averaged in 1963 7 kids per family unit, right? And then you transfer that over to the Gen Xers, and around in 1988 and us, the family unit was like 1.73. It popped back up to 2.05 in the 2000s, and now we're trending back down below 2. So if you generationally just look at how things have evolved, you know, we were kind of coming off of a peak, but if you look out here too, and it was brought up earlier, you know, the grandfather communities of the 70s and those kids, they've gone on, and not all of them can move back. I have seen a bit of a resurgence, it seems like, of families with small kids moving around. Now, are they, well, I know Mike has more than 2 kids, but like not everybody's that way, right? And so we're struggling with that. There's a real thing too about net population declines in California. It's real. It's happened over the couple of years. Who's coming in versus who's going out. There's a net difference. And what that's calculated into is everybody in the state, except for about 5%, are having declining enrollment. It's chronic throughout the state. So we're not getting away from that. And if you look at every other district around us, they're going, well, hey, that's my bread and butter. Every child that I have, if I let them go to another district, well, then that's one less ADA I get. If you don't take anything into effect about how they get funded versus us. And anything else on declining enrollment to add, because it's a real thing. Any other thoughts? Funding. Go ahead.
So just one more thing about declining enrollment. As we talk about transfer students and what that implies for planning for us, that makes lots of difficulties in planning. Whereas historically that was something we would see our inter-district capacity filled in January. Those districts that are releasing students are now not doing so until April, May sometimes.
They want to see how their populations are.
Yeah, they want to see how their own populations are, and that impacts our ability to plan. How many teachers do we need to retain? Do we have to like changing our staffing size, there's lots of effects that decreasing enrollment outside of our district is having as well, not just in our district, but it's affecting everybody. And even if it wasn't affecting us, the fact that it's affecting the rest of the county is going to have some effect on us as well. So just throwing that out there as well.
That's a good point. And then I just heard this week that another out of county district is having to lay off 160 employees.
Talk about it.
I can't even believe it. It's just like, how did that get there? It's just unbelievable. I'm bringing it up because it's chronic. And if anybody thinks that, that's getting any better, it's not. It is systemic, if you will, everywhere. And so that does affect us, right? Because the days of when we had 1,000, those are gone, or almost 1,000. And what that did is it allowed your tank to get a little fuller. And obviously it was trending in the opposite direction. COVID blows it up. And now we got declining enrollment everywhere in the last 5 years because of what I just said. So on funding source. So when I first got here, and Dee Baker was around back then, I remember getting on the board and my head was swimming because you're like, wow, there's so much to know. But I'm good at understanding numbers as part of my regular business. But what I couldn't understand is, why doesn't everybody get the same amount? And back in the day, up until LCFF, it was the revenue limit system. There was a base revenue limit. Small schools got more money, but we weren't a small school. So any school that was like less than 0 to 250 ADA, they got a kicker. This is how we looked at it from a state funding mechanism. We were a medium school, 251 to 1500 ADA. And those in the larger districts always got less because they always thought, okay, your economy scales are greater, and therefore you get less money, but you should be able to do more with less overall. And I always recall Dee saying, like, we're still not there. We don't meet our base grant amounts. We talked about a $2 billion, taking the rug out from underneath education back in 2008. Prop 98 was established a long time ago. We did this Prop 98 reserve vote where we said, hey, for a rainy day, because we have all these deficits in California, we got to be able to fund things. So we're going to stash a bunch of this cash and for a rainy day, then we'll use it to fund education. And that's how we were getting by, and right about that transition time, where they were trying to stuff those into the coffers, they came up with the local control funding formula. Anything else on like revenue limit funding? Because that's old. It was here when I started, right? But I want to have everybody understand, because we're trying to understand perspectives. Why was WOOF created? Because we were one of the least funded districts back then. And our community gathered around and supported us. And we all take care of each other. And that's how it's been, and that's how I always want it to be. Because if you look at other districts that don't have a good nexus and take care of things and support and volunteer. And in this case, revenue fund, where other districts were being funded had the money to go arts and music, and we didn't. And so we did it ourselves. It's grassroots stuff, man. You can't create it. It's very fragile and it's very organic. So, so I'm going to let everybody know what LCFF is. And who does not know what LCFF is? It's okay to raise your hand.
I don't.
Okay.
I was on your convinced. I still don't understand.
The reason I'm going to read this in detail, and I copied it off of the California California Ed Board website. So this is all, but go look it up for yourself, and that way you'll understand it better. So it's called Local Control Funding Formula, and we'll get back to that. So it because of this funding mechanism, and maybe it was archaic, but maybe it worked, but it was never fully funded, they said, we're going to change this whole thing. And so what they did is they approved it in 2013 and they implemented it for the first time in 2013, 2014. And they're like, hey, we'll figure this out. But, we're trying to get there fully funded the way we see it by 2020 and early 2020s. But they actually got there in 2019. So I'm going to read to you. This is verbatim. So don't, I don't have an agenda, right? I'm just telling you what it is. So you get base grant, which is standard funding per student. So if you kind of look at base grants for us, that's just a couple of $1,000, that we actually get per kid for a base grant. And we'll talk more about what that looks like now. But if you follow it back to 2013, there's this thing called a supplemental grant. And you get an extra 20% of the base grant extra funding within California local control funding formula for districts with high need students, English learners, foster youth, and low income. Period. That's a supplemental grant. It's based upon your student demographics. Each individual student is funded per that. So if you fall into that category, you get a kicker for that. One student if they fall within that. There's a concentration grant that's added to that. And that's an additional 50% more of the base grant for districts where over 55% of the highest need students, low income English learners, foster youth, get a significant a boost of 20% on top of the base grant for those specific students. So it's targeted funding. This is how they describe it. It provides additional funds specifically for students in unduplicated pupil counts, low-income foster youth English learners. Districts get an extra 20% of the LCFF funds grant for these high-need students. Equity focus, the grant is central to LCFF's goal of closing achievement gaps by giving more money to districts that need it the most. I heard it brought up earlier that money does not equate to student performance, and that is absolutely correct. And the reason for that is you can go look at the county data on the website. And if you look at our stats right now, we're performing, I'm going to ask the staff, what are we performing where we meet basic standards or above? What is our current rough percentage?
For math or language arts?
All or just
Well, I mean, I can't
let's
separate it out.
Because I don't want to overgeneralize. So if you have the answer, that would be great.
68%.
68%. That's a good number.
That's language arts.
Let's just take language arts. So that basically means that of your student population, 68% of the kids are getting it or they're overachieving and understand it better. And then we're still trying to work on that's 32% that need extra help, right? And those kids have always been there. There are areas in the county where we're at 68% and they're at 9%. And that's after over a decade of supplemental funding by LCFF. Those kids are not achieving, and money does not equate to performance, which was brought up. And I'm bringing that up because this is how we're funded. And you're like, well, how did you get there? You're like, well, you're not funded the same. And that's what we've been dealing with. Does anybody have any more input on LCFF?
Just to throw out some numbers so people can try and wrap their head around it a little bit. Base grant somewhere just a little bit south of like $9,000 per student, if I recall correctly, right? Okay, so around $9,000 per student. And then an unduplicated student, so your English learner, your student who needs more specific help to succeed is getting an extra 20% of that number. And then if you're a school or a school district that is reaching above a certain percentage, they're even getting a further grant based upon that. So yeah, you can look at some of these districts that are in our county getting quite a bit more than us and still not able to achieve the same as our district is.
That's kind of, I think, a summary of what.
That's the reality of it. And then funding wise, what does that really mean? So for our district, and Gerardo's not here to help back. Gerardo, if our ADA, if we're getting somewhere in the neighborhood of $11 million and change per student, the same size district in Salinas, what would they roughly be getting based upon that? And it's
11,000. You said 11 million per student.
Oh yeah, 11,000.
Want to clarify?
But it's 11,000 per student.
The overall budget is about 11 million. That's where that number came from. Sorry.
Yeah, and that's what I'm really. What's the total difference between the two?
About 17,000. In Salinas, they're averaging about 17,000 because 20% or 50% additional that they get, it's essentially 7,000 more than we do.
Right, on a basic interruption. Concentration grant is 65%. So it's 20% above base grant for supplemental, 65% above base grant for concentration.
So on an equal sized district in, let's just say, the Salinas Valley, what is the difference on total funding versus our 11 million and change? If it was a comparative size district, not Spreckles either, because it's
Costing student or
no, the overall difference.
7 million.
So same amount of students. Let's just say it's 5 million more. A lot of money, right? So that's where we are. That's where we live. We live in a world where the same amount of students get way less. And that's just all we get. We're not changing the state. Right? The state's not going to change this funding mechanism. We have hoped.
I'm terrible at meeting. I was just hope that.
I'm sorry. This is a board meeting, and I'm sorry.
I just have a question. I guess it's
why I'm sorry.
We have basic aid connected to interdistrict transfers. They could exist together.
I'm sorry. This is a board meeting that's held in public, and it needs to be a discussion amongst the board.
I hope someone can explain why interdistrict transfers.
I think you'll hear it.
Yeah.
I think you'll hear it. There's more.
That's what I'm hoping that I hear.
Yeah.
It's not a law.
I understand we're all people. It's your first time. So I get it. We're all in this together. So I would just say anything, I think we're done with the LCF. Does everybody now kind of understand LCFF, how it affects our tiny little school district? Okay. So now my thought is like, we got funding challenges and we got solutions, right? Right. I just want to talk a little bit about that. Okay. So basic aid. That's what it used to be called. Now it's called community funding. We've been looking at that for a while. So there was a question on, well, how come you haven't been looking at this? Well, we have. And we penciled the numbers over 5 years ago, prior to COVID. And at that time, our tax revenues weren't the same. And then COVID hits, and that threw everybody for a loop. But when we looked at it prior to COVID, what you don't want to do, and it's been brought up at other board meetings, is waffle between, hey, I'm in basic aid or I'm out of basic aid. And it's really about where do you land where it's beneficial to be in LCFF, or there's a number of students that it's trying to figure out where it's going to land. And it says, once you have this many students, it doesn't make sense to be in LCFF, and you might as well go to basic aid. And it changes, and it just changed again on us, right? So we've been forecasting, and I want people to know that we have been looking at this. And so if we're looking at the challenges and the solutions, we have been looking at that. You don't want to waffle in and out of it, which I think everybody knows. COVID came around, there was massive amounts of one-time funding. And I can't stress enough how great we as a team survived that, because it was craziness. The feds were shelling out a ton of cash. and you had to prove how are you going to spend it. And we did the best that we could to do learning loss targeting and additional resources. PPE costs were crazy. So just understand that that did affect us for 2 years. I'm not making any excuses, but what we saw was a ton of one-time funding. And guess what? One-time funding goes away. And so you can't base your existence on it. And I think some other districts that are having to rethink 160 employees have a hangover from that because it's non-sustainable. So we got out of that pretty quick. We've looked at different options. It was already brought up again about closing Washington. When I first got here, I remember the board saying, oh, don't bring up closing Washington or you will have a mutiny on your hands, you know? And it's such a wonderful school and there's so many good things about it. You're like, we've looked at it and we looked at it a long time ago. And the numbers are, if you close it, you save about $110,000. And you're like, is it worth it? It's tough, right? I want you to know that we've already looked at it. And if you hadn't heard that, well, guess what? You heard it now. And we did do that. We looked at stuff like, well, what if we lease it? And that got shot down resoundingly earlier this year as we're looking for different revenue sources. Not even in the equation. We had to look at it though, because of everything I just told you about LCFF. And oh, I'll bring this up. Someone said, well, what if we did 35 kids? What if we made less teachers teach more kids? Well, everybody, I don't want to presume that everybody knows, but the closer you get to like 30 and 35 kids, it's diluted. And it's tougher in the elementary school grades because everyone's like running amok and it's tough to get their attention. So there's a sweet spot. But just to address that one point, like, why can't we just reduce the amount of teachers and make bigger class sizes? Well, we've looked at that, right? And that's a cost cutting measure, right? But is it sustainable? No. And do you have happy teachers? Definitely not. It is tough. And it doesn't save enough, nearly enough to justify it.
It's not fair to the kids either. I don't want my kid in a
No, you get lost in the
second
shuffle.
grade with 35 other kids.
Yeah, start to feel like a number, and it's just tough on everybody. But I want everybody to know that we've looked at options like that. There's a lot of various things, but it's still coming up, so I'm still going to keep talking about it. School of choice came up. That's an interesting mechanism, but again, and then Gina, do you have anything you could add on school of choice at this particular time?
The only thing with district of choice is that it did become limiting and highly risky for the school district. We would set a number. You would set, as a board, you would set a threshold for how many students we would accept. As a district of choice, we would take that designation to register as a district of choice with the state. And then inter-district enrollment becomes essentially a sign-up. We take first come, first serve. We cannot monitor things like a student who may not be a good fit because of behavior. A student who may come to us with a high level of need from outside the district, which would become the district's burden financially. If a student qualifies for free and reduced lunch, the district would be incumbent upon the district to provide any transportation. So we could be in a position where the risk of accepting the first to sign up to meet that threshold of enrollment that we set could become a tremendous burden for the district. We could be transporting kids in and out of the district by qualification. We could be taking on students with exceptional needs for which we would become responsible for providing that service. And we would have no choice in that. So it's highly risky for us.
So,
Yes.
So Gina, so if there was a student in King City that put their name in the lottery and they were receiving free and reduced lunch,
we would pay transportation for that kid?
That is correct.
I don't see how any school could do that. I don't.
There's only 40 districts in the state that are registered as district of choice. It's not a recommendation, that's a strategy. I haven't spoken to any of those 40 to find out why, what their motivation was. But it's a highly risky proposition for a district to go district of choice.
That's the thing. I mean, I don't even understand how that works. To start a lottery and you take this kid and then, all of a sudden the child needs some kind of special services that you're.
I don't think
I don't
that
see how
it's
that works.
it's different than the discussion of are you community funded or LCFF funded, right? And
Correct.
there's not enough savings in there or additional funding to justify one versus the other. So the logic of it is that, but that's not necessarily a funding source, but it's a different style of school, right? And we have the same freedom to kind of operate in the same way we want, if we wanted to in the future, except.
Right. I believe that the request to consider becoming a district of choice is because we could receive some LCFF funding for those students. It would be about 70% of base grant.
So, Gina, the school districts that I looked at that I think are schools of choice, it's hard to find out because the internet doesn't tell you everything accurately, is that they're pretty large school districts so that they have a full complement of special education services. So they're not having to outsource their special education in the way that we do.
Sure.
An additional 70% of our base grant doesn't get us where we need to do, because what the state says, hey, we're just going to use your local county taxes to fund the delta, right? And
Correct.
so for the last couple of years, our base grant funding is in the neighborhood of 2.9 million, or what is it? Got it. 2.7, and then the local revenue is 8.3. So that doesn't pencil.
Wait, right.
You sure? I got state aid at 2.7 in 23-24, and I got local revenue at 8.3. So I don't feel that that's the mechanism either. I want to bring it up because it was brought up, and it was brought up by there's some highly intelligent people bringing up stuff, and they're trying to crunch the numbers to help, and I appreciate it, but not all part of the analysis do I agree with. I'll just say that I appreciate the input and I agree with a ton, but on that particular one, I don't agree with. So we're looking at, different funding mechanisms and how do we get there? And I think we've kind of exhausted everything because we haven't really, we have a choice to make based upon the data that we have and options that are out there. And so that kind of leads into this current financial analysis, right? And I'm ready to speak on that when anybody else do. Like current finances, what we've been seeing here.
Does anybody have anything they want to jump in? Oh,
Not necessarily. I mean, I do have things to say too, but I want
Jump in, and I don't mean to. I have a lot on my brain, and I'm going to tell it.
But maybe you should keep going, and then we'll go.
Okay, so I got numbers from, and this kind of talks about, well, why didn't you act before? And because we're just getting numbers live, and it's very recent history about LCFF that affects us. So Gerardo, I'm going to call on you again here too, but I did ask for these numbers. I don't have them all, but if we just take 23 to 24, whatever that funding was from the state that we get on LCFF, in 24 and 25, we got $422 left per student. You multiply that times 740, and that's $312,000. That's a lot of teacher salary. And so that's just 1 year. I don't have multi-years on that because I don't have that at my fingertips. But that gets back to this orange and blue graph we've been looking at. The blue was always, what is the state actually giving you? And what we're finding is bad news in the last couple of years. and it's getting worse. So where we think like, hey, we've already hit our floor, we should be good. We got recent data this year, and it's similar, right? It's in the neighborhood of $400,000 less than we got the year prior. So that's over $700,000 less in state funding in the last 2 years alone. And now we're headed down this road where we're making, Gerardo's got to come up with financial reports based on what we're anticipating to get, governor's budget, our own expenditures, revenue sources. And at the first interim report, which was just presented last week, we have a reserve that we're tapping into to stay in LCFF funding. We've built this reserve because it's necessary. We've used it a couple times during COVID. We always wanted it, and it's in the neighborhood of $3.9 million. What it does is it allows us to pay payroll without borrowing from the county or the state. It's just good business. And during COVID, we came close to tapping that out, right? And then we rebounded, and we've built it back up since then. But from what was reported out, and I'm going to paraphrase, and I'm answering your question, in the next few years, we're not deficit spending. We tried to tell the county, like, hey, we're not doing so good. We have a contingent request on our financing. They say that we're deficit spending. They said, well, we understand that you're going to spend $900,000 out of your coffer this year and next year, cumulative plus. But since you have the money, you're not deficit spending. So we have to turn in a budget that says, hey, because of the underfunding and the funding gap, we're going to be $2 million in the hole on our reserves. And the history tells us that we're not getting any better. So to answer your question, inadvertently, I hope that explains it. We will run out of money very soon on these multi-year projections. And the only thing that would save us, it would be like if we got the equal amount of money that every other school, let's just say in the county gets, excluding Pacific Grove and Carmel. But that's not going to happen. That's why I wanted to talk about like the more recent data that we got. And this isn't like, oh, Gerardo just told us last week. No, this is like, it's kind of a regular theme if you attend the meetings, unfortunately. And so we're trying to do what we can. And I hope everybody understands that.
Yeah, it's I think a part of life is where you're, things happen and we get pictures, we understand a little better, we see what sorts of decisions are being made elsewhere, how they're going to affect us, and we can adjust our budgets based on that a couple times a year, looking at where we're at. And so we have to continue to do that, project out as best as we can over the next couple of years and make decisions on that information that we've got.
Absolutely. Like that's how we operate. So if you had, those that knew the finances, we're doing multi-year projections. They're checked every quarter at a minimum. We get audited. The state reviews it. The newer information as well is since COVID, and I'll bring it back up, our tax revenues have gone up quite a bit. And the assessor really likes to increase your tax bill in this area. It seems like more than 2%, but their threshold is 2. We've had certain families in the neighborhood that are older families. They sell their home, right? Maybe they were only paying $1,000 in taxes. Well, the new resident is going to pay, $10,000 to $20,000 in taxes, and that coffer starts to go up more than the 2%. And so we've seen that. So as you're doing this analysis on what was basic aid, now community funded, we're just at this spot where it puts you in a situation potentially more like Carmel and PG, where it can actually sustain it. And that's kind of the facts of the situation.
If you look at the change over time, that too, I mean, that goes back to before COVID, where we had the housing recession, and all the house prices were far less, and then we all this income from this one-time income, and once we have used all that or we've lost all that, now we can see that the tax base has changed.
It has, and there was a time where they kind of held your increases, but they like to increase it, and they are allowed to do it 2%. Just so we're clear too, the one-time funding, it went away in 2022. So it's not like we're over here surviving on any of that, just so we're clear, because I brought it up earlier. But
thank you, John. That's picture.
That's just the facts, right now.
I'd like to have everybody else take on the
absolutely
give us some thoughts and things like that. Hopefully, you mentioned you had a couple things.
Okay. Well, John brought up my folks bought a house out in San Bernardino in 1964. My dad was a junior architect making $19,000 a year, and he built a house for $26,000 in 1964. It's not the house of an architect, it's the house of a man who was making $19,000 with 6 kids. Because my mom wanted to live in the country, and they were able to do that. When people have written to us and said, if people want to be in this district, they should buy a house in this district, my heart seizes. The only reason I'm in this district is because I moved back here in 2012 to help take care of my father who had dementia. He died in 2014, and my other 4 of my siblings took less inheritance so that one of my brothers and his wife and my husband and myself and our kids could inherit that house. That's the only reason we're in this district. So this is an exclusive community, and I was proud of the fact that we have 40% in district transfers. When John says 68% of our kids are meeting or exceeding standards, and 9% of the kids in some of these other districts are meeting or exceeding standards, that means that when we decide to revoke inter-district transfers, we are sending these kids back to those districts. And I'm so angry about the way schools in California are funded, because it shouldn't be that way. The parents that are our inter-district parents care enough about their kids' education that they take the time, the resources, the energy to get them here. And they've made our schools better. They haven't taken away from our schools, they've made our schools better. Now, that doesn't change what John's saying about funding. The reason that we don't have a plan and we didn't start revoking inter-district transfers earlier is because we wanted to make it work. After COVID, we wanted to see those numbers go back up because it is economies of scale. And if we could have gotten back up to 800, 900 students, we can make it work. But we don't even have a choice about community funding. I don't know if John, if you got that. Like, when we fall below 671 students, the state will not give us any more money. So we don't get to decide that we're going to stay LCFF. Because if we can't get the students, we are not going to get the money. And what I think is interesting right now is that the state has decided that when we get to 671 students, all of the property tax in this area, in this neighborhood, should pay for this education of those students. But we know it won't. And so the other reason why this works is because we only have 420 kids. If we had 670 inter-district kids, we wouldn't even be having this conversation, because we can't educate 671 kids on what we've got. So I'm devastated by this. I'm devastated by the teachers that we could lose. I'm devastated by the families that we're going to use. I don't like becoming a more exclusive community. I like being able to tell people we are the best public education in Monterey County that you can get your kid into. I was proud of that because we can do that. 2 months ago, Lily made a presentation and she talked about kids who come into our district who they're limited English proficient. And after a certain number of years, they are not only meeting expectations, they are exceeding expectations in our district. And I'm so proud of that. And so I want to say thank you to all of the inter-district families that are here. Thank you for speaking up. I know it's hard. You don't elect us. You don't live in the district. You couldn't vote on the bond. So, and I know you pay a lot of, that was the interesting thing too. A lot of you that are not in our district, you were paying more school taxes than we were, right? You weren't going to, you may not be going to Salina City School District schools, but you were paying their taxes. And so John didn't bring that up, but we also wouldn't be, we wouldn't necessarily be where we are if we'd been able to pass 2 bonds.
The bond fees would just help with basically maintenance and safety. And that's where that was. That was never going to work for additional students or anything. It's one-time money.
Yes, but it would have given us breathing.
Things are so expensive. Well, we weren't asking for a ton, but that's not what the community wanted. It's tough to get a bond passed out of here for maintenance and safety and things we were trying to address. And I think we've already been over. Well, why don't you use your funding? Well, good luck with that.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you to our interdistrict families, and I hope you're getting the message that you've been an asset to our district.
Absolutely.
I just want to thank you, John, for explaining that, all the details, the history, bit by bit. It even helps me to digest it further.
A lot.
Yeah, a lot. I'm the newest person on this table, so it's been a lot to take in and understand. I appreciate that. Thank you to everyone who sends us emails and letters and has the courage to speak. I appreciate all of that. Helps to hear a lot of different perspectives. So thank you so much.
Ditto to what everyone said. Thank you. This is not an easy place to be in here. You know, we hear you, and we. I appreciate, Johnny, on your explanation, and I appreciate you're a numbers guy. I have a really good numbers guy on my side, and I have a teacher also. Mm-hmm. I appreciate that teacher perspective.
Me too.
And then I'm a parent, and we're all parents up here, and we have the parent perspective. And you know, it's just, this is an unfortunate place where we're at. I don't want to be in this position, and we are, and we've been seeing, and we've been talking. I've been on the board for.
I was
going to say 10. I don't think it's 10 yet, but yeah. You know, and we have been talking about this. We have been seeing this coming, and we have been trying different things. And yeah, I don't know.
I want to echo a little bit of what everybody else has said as well. Same with hope that this is something that I've been really proud of talking about, with how much we've been able to bring students into our district, families who want to be part of our district, and looking at the results we're getting, like every year when we think that the English learner results coming out of that test is one of the best days that we have as a board, because we get to see how well our students are doing, how effective our staff is, how great we are at doing our job. Like it really is, and it goes back to that point of, you know, it's not necessarily about the money. Like that isn't always linked. And I've been going back and forth in every possible way that we can think of to try and make these numbers work. I feel like a pinball is going around and around all over the time, and at some point, you have to look at where the numbers do fall from. And, you know, this has been a process that we've been talking about for a long time. I've been on board for 5 years. One of the very first meetings that I came to was, you know, we're looking at a cliff in the future. And then that was kind of thrown off and made more of a gradual hill because of COVID. But now we've reached the bottom of that, and we're having to look at what exactly does our future look like at this point in time. And so, you know, with all of the things that we've been talking about and all of the
input that we've gotten from our community and both the neighborhood community and our school community. I think we need to, and our committee worked for the last couple of months to understand the recommendations which they presented to us last week of moving towards community funding and getting a couple of options that they would advise towards. I think at this point, I'd like to have anybody make a motion for one way or the other.
I'll make the motion. I'll make the motion to, based on what the committee has provided us, to move towards community funding.
I think we have to read the item, the action item 3I or 3.1, right?
3.1. So I make a motion to approve.
There.
So you want me to read it word for word, John? Is that what
I think that's the way it's.
Okay, so I make a motion to approve of the elimination of interdistrict transfer enrollment for purposes of transitioning the district to community-funded revenue model.
I'll second that.
Just all right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you. Moving on to the consideration of phased-in enrollment strategy, looking at how and what the future and what like the last 3 years.
If I could get it to the podium, I can talk. Yeah, why don't you come behind?
They're all stuck together. There you go. Try to go underneath.
Okay, I'm gonna go through some slides here. I want to start just by saying thank you to the board. And I want to thank everybody here for being here, for the feedback you've provided. I want to talk a little bit about responsibility. We're in a tough place. These are conversations we've been having for many years. We've suggested and we've discussed options at our board retreats over the years. And we've been having a lot of conversations throughout COVID. This is a board that is not only passionate about the district, but has been very careful, very conservative. And we've budgeted very conservatively over the years, knowing that, you know, we always have a tight budget, going back to 2008. When COVID hit, we struggled a little bit, but we maintained. Coming out of COVID, we talked about strategies for moving forward. We talked about enrollment strategies. We talked about capping our enrollment. We talked about capping our interdistrict transfer enrollment. We've talked about a lot of things. School funding in California is in dire need of reform. We know that. And I think that the governor's budget in January is probably going to be a little bit dire. We'll know that in a few weeks when we go up to Sacramento and find out. So we're in a place where we have to make hard decisions. And this is a terrible place for our district. You know, the greatest part of my job is visiting classrooms and seeing our kids, seeing the amazing work that they're doing, seeing the progress that they make, watching our teachers work. We have an amazing staff. It's hard right now. It hurts. It hurts all of us. And I know you get 2 plug nickels how I feel because of the seat in which I sit, and I understand that. But this is hard. It's hard on everybody. But we have to make decisions because we have to move forward, and the future of the district is at stake. And we've reached the point where we do have to make those decisions based on all of our conversations over the years and based on all of the planning. So my responsibility to you tonight, based on your decision, is to provide you with some of the options that we've looked at based on our budget, based on budget projections. So I'm going to present those. I'm going to start with the recommendations from the Committee on Community Funding. They presented you with two options, and I'll start with those. Option one is what we call the middle school phase out. The middle school phase out is going to require us to stop accepting interdistrict enrollment beginning in the fall of 2026, except for our current 6th and 7th graders. They would be allowed to matriculate out of middle school. This option, I will say right up front, is conditional. It is conditional because Ed Code 46600 says that students, even on our current interdistrict transfer that said you have to renew annually, without a signed contract between districts that says what the terms of that annual or what says what the terms of your renewal are, a student is allowed to finish the highest grade at the school in which they attend. So for our district, that would mean students would be able to stay through 3rd grade at Toro Park, through 5th grade at Washington Union. So option one is conditional based on signed contracts with districts. Okay. So I'm going to start there. All right. So in this model. Yeah.
Just for a clarification point, that contract that you're discussing is different than the paperwork
That's correct. Our agreements and every district that sends students to us on their interdistrict agreement, it states it requires annual renewal. However, Ed Code says that in order to enforce that annual renewal in a way in which you control your enrollment, there has to be a signed contract that's board approved between districts. So we don't currently have those, and it's not a practice that has been done in this area, from what I understand as I'm talking to other districts for quite some time. Most superintendents assume that because my form says annual renewal and your form says annual renewal, that's our agreement. But it does require a signed contract. Yeah.
Just want to clarify that those are different.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to bringing that to either board, though, you would need those agreements signed, right?
Yep.
So any other district could say, no, I don't agree this year, and then that doesn't apply anymore. It can't be presented to the board because they already said on that one student or whatever, I'm not allowing that. Correct? So you would be.
It wouldn't be on a per student basis. It would be district to district.
It's district to district, but based upon, hey, we've got these commitments, and then that's brought to the board. So
correct.
Some of its parts. It's like, here's the kids that are trying to come in, and this qualified, if you will. And that other district has to approve that student can come. And then that gets presented, whatever that sum of its parts is, gets presented to the board to approve for that year. That's the way I see it going. Is that how you see that going?
I'm not sure. I think you're assuming that it requires board approval to accept students. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
If I was presented with an agreement from another board that said, hey, I want you to approve students for this year, and I'm going to
no, that's not what the agreement is. What the agreement is it's an agreement between my district and your district that says we both accept interdistrict transfer students. What we're going to do is we're going to set the terms for when those renewals need to take place. If you want your students to renew their interdistrict transfer applications annually, we're going to set that term between us. So I'm going to sign the contract, you're going to sign the contract. And so for the next 5 years of that contract, my students, your students who attend each other's districts have to renew those contracts on an annual basis. Doesn't separate out individual students. That's still up to the district to accept or deny individual students.
Yeah.
It just sets the terms for renewal.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's your qualification.
Yeah. Okay. You good?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. All right. So in this first model, the middle school phase out, Gerardo has shown 22, 23, and 24, 23, 24, and 24, 25 for purposes of showing you the 3-year averaging that we've been talking about as we head out of LCFF funding and into community funding. So what we're going to look at, what these charts show is what our actual enrollment is, what our average daily attendance is, what we're funded on based on the 3-year averaging. And then below that on the yellow line, we've got the revenue that's coming in plus other sources of revenue, total expenses, and then the net finishing place at the end of the year, what our balance is. The blue line starting fund balance is in our general fund. It's what we call Fund 01. And the ending fund balance would be the impact of what that net increase or decrease is. And then we'll get to staffing at the bottom. So for the middle school phase out, in this current year, we have an enrollment of 740 students with an average daily attendance of 695.6. Our 3-year averaging, that's where we get funded on, is 709 based on our prior year's average daily attendance. So we have a total revenue or total LCFF revenue right now of 8.5 million with revenue from other sources totaling 2.7 million. We have total expenditures of a little over 11 billion. So for this year, we'll finish with 314,000 to the positive. So with a starting fund balance of 1.9 million, we'll end the year at about 2.3 million. We currently have 34 teachers. So in this model, middle school phase out, we would have to lay off 6 teachers at the end of this school year. So moving into 26-27, the enrollment would be down to 509 students with an ADA of 478 and a 3-year average attendance of 699. Revenues of 8.6 million and 2.1 million, and total expenditures of 10 million. In this year, there's a net end of 723,000 to the positive, which increases our Fund 01 ending fund balance will increase to a little over 3 million. Again, as we're moving through and we're matriculating students out, we would lose another 6 teachers. So that's 12 teachers in 2 years. By 27-28, our enrollment is at 474 with an average daily attendance of 445. Our 3-year averaging has now gotten us down to 628 students. The pink shading indicates that we've now hit the threshold for community funding, which means we're no longer funded under local control funding formula, and the revenue of 8.1 million is our property tax revenue. We get a little over 2 million in other sources with expenditures of 10 million. Our ending is about 269,000 to the positive. So now our general fund balance is up to almost 3.3 million, and we're at 22 teachers. 22 teachers is the base. That's what we'll get down to. It won't go any lower unless there are ongoing changes in our enrollment. So by 28-29, we're at 443. You can see the average daily attendance. The 3-year averaging is no longer of import. Our property tax revenue is 8.3 million with additional revenues of 2.1, expenditures of 10.3. We've got a net ending of another 180,000. Our ending fund balance is now up to 3.47 million at 22 teachers. And by 29-30, our enrollment is at 446 with an average daily attendance of 419. Revenue of 8.5 million, other sources at 2.1, expenditures of 10.5, and another net fund, a net ending of 197. So our ending fund balance by 29-30 is about $3.6 million. So that's option 1. Again, as I said, it's conditional based on those contracts, and that was option 1 as recommended by the Committee on Community Funding.
So just for clarification for myself, so if we vote on this option, then what are the next steps?
Before we could move forward with this option, if this is what the board chooses to move forward with,
we have more. We want to look.
We would have to work to make sure that we get all those contracts in place before this could be enacted. Otherwise, we would be outside of it.
And how many districts are you talking about?
We have to go through all districts that send us students, which is, I think, about right this school year, it's about 7 districts, I believe. The 3 major contributors are Monterey Peninsula Unified, Salinas City, and Sparkles. Okay, our second option is what we call the grade span phase out. That was the second option recommended by the committee. In the grade span phase out, we follow what we referred to in what we referenced earlier as Ed Code 46600, which says students even though our forms say annual renewal, students can stay to the highest grade offered at the school. So in this model, middle school students obviously stay until they go to high school. Students can finish 5th grade at Washington. Students at Toro Park can go through 3rd grade. So we went through numbers for 25, 26 do not change. However, staffing does. So in the grade span phase out, at the end of this school year, we would lose 3 teachers. In 26, 27, our enrollment would be at 629 with an average daily attendance of 591. Revenues, LCFF revenues are 8.6 million with an additional 2.19 in other sources. Expenditures of 10.4 million with a net ending of $335,000. So our ending fund balance would go from 2.3 to 2.6 million. At the end of 26, 27 with 31 teachers, this is where we would take the biggest hit, where the most students matriculate out, and we would have to lay off 7 teachers at the conclusion of the 26, 27 school year. Enrollment would be at 540 for 27, 28 with an average daily attendance of 507. Revenue of 8.4 million with other sources totaling almost 2.2 million with a net ending of 423,000. Ending fund balance is up over 3 million. At the conclusion of 27, 28, we would lay off 1 additional teacher. In 28, 29, we would hit community funding. So our enrollment would be at 476, average daily attendance of 447. The 3-year averaging would take us to 598, which puts us in community funded status. So our property tax revenue is 8.3 million with an additional 2.1 in other sources. Expenditures of 10.3 million and a net ending positive $142,000. Our general fund ending fund balance is up to 3.2 million. And at the conclusion of the 28-29 school year, we would lay off 1 additional teacher to get to the 22. In 29-30, we have an enrollment of 446 with an average daily attendance of 419. Property tax revenues of 8.558, an additional revenue of 2.1. Our expenditures of 10.6 million at that point, with a net positive of 71,000 and an ending fund balance of 3.276. That's our grade span phase out. So over the last couple of weeks, as we've had conversations following the Committee on Community Funding, there have been other ideas that have surfaced and other conversations between me and you board members as you have come in. So this next model was one of those ideas. The conversation was, what if, yes, John?
Is grade span phase out, is that contingent on anything?
No.
And can you explain that just in a summary? Starting with, sorry, I don't mean to backtrack, but 1, middle school phase out means that no new interdistrict students are taken, and only those in 6th and 7th are allowed to finish their grades.
Correct.
Okay. And then grade span phase out is you attend up until your last year of the school you're currently in.
That's correct.
To explain that in layman's terms, if you're in 3rd grade this year, you don't get to move to 4th grade.
That's
and if
correct.
you're in 5th grade, you don't get to move to sixth grade.
That's correct.
But everyone else, like from kinder,
Yes.
can
TK, kinder,
can
first,
finish.
second, move up a grade.
Okay,
Fourth grade moves to fifth.
got it.
And all the while, just keep it in mind to put a fine point on it. We stopped accepting new interdistrict transfers as of the fall of 2026.
Right.
Okay. So the next model is what we call the 4A phase out. That conversation was if younger students who aren't as established can move on and get established in a new school, new district, maybe slightly easier than a student who's made it all the way to fourth grade in our district. And the concern was, the older students having to move out after attending our district for several years. So what if we eliminate interdistrict transfer enrollment from Toro Park School, but allow our fourth and fifth graders to stay through eighth grade? So that's what this model represents. So you can see 25-26 is exactly the same as it's been. In 26-27 school year, we would lose 6 teachers. Enrollment would be at 559, average daily attendance at 525, and the 3-year averaging at 699. Revenue would be 8.6 and an additional 2.197. Expenditures are at 10.1 million, with a net positive ending 683,000, which increases our ending fund balance to 2.9 million. At the end of the 26-27 school year, we would lay off 2 additional teachers. Our enrollment in 27-28 would be 524, with an average daily attendance of 492. 3-year averaging would be 644, and our revenue would be 8.1, with an additional 2.179. Expenditures of 10.394, with a deficit of 68,000 at the end of the 27-28 school year, which decreases our ending fund balance to 2.919. At the end of 27-28, we would actually, this gets a little tricky because we would have to add a teacher back in. Without getting into a lot of details, when the middle school moves from departmentalized courses to 6th grade would be self-contained. So the staffing would change. We'd have to eliminate a multi-subject teacher, but we'd have to then add back in a multi-subject at the end of that school year to get the 6th grade back to 2 self-contained classes. Right? Did I say that right, Joe?
Yeah, we'd add a single subject because we're taking single subject out of the mix with the 6th grade. 6th graders are currently in the mix of the whole master schedule. When you self-contain them and take a teacher out, we have to add a single subject back in.
So that's why you see the +1 at the end of 27-28. So in 28-29, we'd have an enrollment of 493. That's where we hit the community funding threshold at 571. So we'd have a revenue of 8.3. Other sources would be 2.1. Our expenditures at that point are 10.7, and we'd have a deficit of 245,000, which takes our ending fund balance down to 2.6. At the end of the 28-29 school year, we would lay off 5. So going into 29-30, we would project an enrollment of 468 with an average daily attendance of 439. Property tax revenues of 8.5, additional revenue of 2.1, expenditures of 10.7 million, and then a net negative of 39,000. And that would be our 22 teachers. Our ending fund balance would be at 2.6 million. So that's the 4-8 phase out. Any questions on that one?
So this would be students who are in Washington right now would get to continue through.
Yeah.
If we were to phase them out, each 5th graders, and as much as we could work with other districts to soften going back to it. If you're going to another district around here in 6th grade, you're going to one school and then you'd be going to a middle school. And
Correct.
We would have 3 changes of schools, or
Yep.
4 changes of schools in 3 years, 3 changes of schools in 4 years.
You're counting high school.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, yes, that's correct.
Something we failed to mention that's tricky in this one is that one additional teacher is a 1-year gig, because that when we drop 5 teachers in this scenario and the next one, those are all single subject middle school teachers to align with the amount of kids that are now phasing out of the middle school.
Okay, am I reading that right? So 4th through 8th phase out. Don't mind me. So Washington would only you'd phase out 4th and 5th. After 5th, you wouldn't go to the middle school.
No, you can go to the middle school. That's the point of this model, that the kids stay.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
But Adam said something that I thought.
No,
sorry,
that was
yeah.
that was meaning that if we followed either of the other 2 ones that have been presented so far, and once you were finished, if you were finishing with Washington, you would be going to maybe Washington in town, but you wouldn't go there immediately. You would go to Mission Park. You'd go to some other school for a year.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Because for 6th grade,
They're K through 6.
before you go to middle school.
I get it.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking.
At
That's
another
where
school.
I was
And
confused on this one.
This would allow those kids to have one less school transition at that point.
Right. Okay, thank you.
So the next model is based on what I just said, except this is just 5 through 8. So the 4th graders, yes, John?
And is 3 contingent?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, 3 would be contingent.
So the out of area district would have to agree to release the kids individually, and the boards would have to meet.
We'd have to do the agreement for annual renewals, yes. Similar to the last one, this next one is a 5-8 phase out. So rather than staying fourth graders staying on, it would be just 5th graders who would be allowed to move on to the middle school. So 25-26, we've seen. At the end of 25-26, in this model, we have to lay off 7 teachers, taking us down to 27 teachers in 26-27. Our enrollment is 559, average daily attendance of 525. 3-year averaging is still at 699, and our revenue would be 8.6 plus an additional 2.2. Expenditures of 10.115 with a net ending of 682,000 and an increase to the ending fund balance to 2.987. We would not lay off any teachers at the conclusion of 26-27. In 27-28, we would be at 502 with an average daily attendance of 471. 3-year average would take us to 644 and revenue of 8.145 with an additional 2.179. Expenditures are 10.4, and we would see a net deficit of 76,000 in that year, which would decrease our ending fund balance to 2.9 million. At the conclusion of the 27-28 school year, we would have to lay off an additional 5 teachers. And in 28-29, our enrollment is 471 with an average daily attendance of 442. We hit our our community funding threshold at 564. Property tax revenues would be 8.344 with additional revenues of 2.163. Expenditures of 10.249 million with a net ending to the positive of 258,000. Bringing our ending fund balance back up to 3.168 million. At that point, we are at our 22 teachers, so there's no additional layoffs. And in 29-30, it would be 446 with an average daily attendance of 419. Property tax revenue of 8.55 million with additional revenues of 2.1. Expenditures at 10.5 with a net increase or a net positive of 177,000. And our ending fund balance up to 3.346 million.
Just contingent.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, the final one that we need to look at is the TK phase out. And it's one we've talked about. It's one in which We stopped the practice of accepting inter-district enrollment in the fall of 2026, but every inter-district transfer student who is currently enrolled is allowed to stay. So 25-26, we already know what it looks like. At the end of 25-26, we lay off one teacher. In 26-27, our enrollment is 696 with an average daily attendance of 654. Our 3-year averaging is still at 699 with revenues of 8.6 million and additional 2.2 from other sources. With expenditures of 10.7 million, we have a net to the positive of 32,000. Our ending fund balance is 2.337, and at the end of 26-27, we would lay off 2 teachers. In 27-28, we're at 661 students with an average daily attendance of 621. Our 3-year averaging takes us to 687. Revenues of 8.655 million with an additional 2.179. Expenditures of 10.9 million with a net decrease of 114,490, bringing our ending funding balance to 2.2 million. 31 teachers, we would lay off an additional to get us to 30 teachers. In 28-29, we're at 630 students with an average daily attendance of 592, 3-year averaging of 657, revenue of 8.517, an additional 2.163, with expenditures of 11.2 million. We have a net decrease or deficit of 519,000, bringing our ending fund balance down to 1.7 million. At the end of 28-29, we would lay off an additional teacher. And in 29-30, our enrollment is at 605 with average daily attendance of 568. This is where we hit our community funding threshold. So our property taxes are at 8.579 million with additional revenue of 2.1. Expenditures are at 11.461 million with a net deficit of 727,000, bringing our ending fund balance down to 975,000 in the general fund. We're at 29 teachers. We'd have to lay off an additional 2 going into the 30-31 school year. We have additional information available. I haven't played it out because at a $727,000 deficit in 29-30 with $975,000 left in our general fund, we would be looking at some assistance from the county and the state beyond that point.
This is contingent.
No, this one is not contingent.
It's contingent in the aspect that other districts would still allow inter-district transfers to meet those numbers.
Well, I mean, from an enrollment perspective, it's contingent on other districts releasing the students and us maintaining enrollment. Yes.
I want to make sure we're clear on that.
Yeah.
But that's clear. But that's all of them. I mean, at any point in time, Salina City could say,
yeah.
At any point in time, sure. And so, I mean, Salina City has already said they're not going to release any new inter-districts, which is what, it sort of sped up our decision-making process because there was an impact to our future enrollment because Salina City is such a large contributor. But, at any point in the next 5 years, any of the districts around us who are all in declining enrollment, I'd say we're done.
And this really doesn't play itself out until, it seems so far away, 2033 and 23. That's when the current kindergartner from this year will be in 8th grade.
When the final students matriculate out, I think it's 34-35 or 34-35.
But based on that deficit spending in our reserves, we won't.
Yeah, the reserve will be gone. And so I see this as non-sustainable.
when you mention the county would be giving us assistance or the state giving us assistance at this point in time, what does that entail?
So somewhere along, Gerardo can probably speak to it better than I. But somewhere along this path, between 27, when we start looking at our first interim budgets and our second interim budgets, and we're sending those to the county, somewhere along this space, 27, 20, but probably 28, 29, the county's going to step in. We'll be in qualified status, which means we have to indicate to the county that we may not be able to make our financial obligations. So the county will come in. look at our budget, give us some guidance and look to see if there's any changes we could make financially that could help to right that ship in essence. If not, following that, then FCMAT, the Fiscal Crisis Management Team, would come in. We would probably go into receivership, which means the state would come in and take over.
That's how that plays itself out. If you
That's how it plays itself out.
If you mismanage your funds, you become a ward of the state.
Essentially, yeah.
But we're not mismanaging our funds. We're saying
It's not mismanagement. It's just it's an inability to maintain the obligations under that funding model.
So essentially, what the state, yes, we're not mismanaging in this scenario, but what the state would say, the county obviously is going to reject the budget. When we approve 28, 29, they're going to reject it. They're going to say, take it back, make updates to it. We'll try to make some adjustments, send it back. They're going to reject it, send it back, and then they don't approve the budget. So if we don't have an approved budget by July 1st, we technically can't run, and we can't do payroll. So somehow, let's suppose they approve it. Now we're done spending like $400,000. Then in the state, if they do come in, yes, we're not mismanaging, like you said. But they'll see it as, what are you guys doing? Why are you guys not balancing? Essentially, what they want to see is a balanced budget. They don't want to see us definitely spending so much throughout time.
So there's the minimum reserve that we're required to maintain. Is it 4%?
We don't fall under, so it's weird. Like, earlier you said we're not small, even though I believe we're small, right? But it's either small or big, and we're considered big because we're over the 150 ADA. 150 below is small, and now we're just a medium-sized big district because we compare ourselves to districts that have almost 3,000 students.
Right. And just for context, that was the revenue limit funding source calculation from back in 2000.
Right.
So I wasn't trying to compare the two. I was showing how the state looked at us back then. We were medium back then, and now we're kind of Ivan Hayes. Yeah. So bottom line is you have to maintain that. So if your ending fund balance dips you below your 4% reserve, you're out of play. You got to maintain a 4% reserve. And it was 1.7. Where do we dip into that? And just as we've talked before, they'll say, hey, take your reserves down, and when your reserves are gone, then you're really deficit spending. So,
Can I ask? Can I add on a little bit?
Yeah.
So we've always sort of behaved more as a small district because 4% of our budget is not that much when you compare it to like Los Angeles Unified's 4% is gobs more than we could ever dream of. So, we've always had a larger reserve for that just to make sure that we actually have the amount we would be needing, right? And so when we look at this 1.9 that we have now or 1.7 in the future or whatever, that is actually above the 7% because we're trying to be responsible and
be able to pay your bill
and be able to pay our bills. So we don't have to borrow money to pay payroll like we almost had to in COVID,
Yeah. Yeah, that's why you got rainy day funds, and we've used them, already. And what is the minimum for our size district? Don't they want you above around 25% in the reserve?
Districts like to be pretty above anything else, like normally about 17 to 25, 30s. That's the average. Most districts right now, their average reserve is about 30s. Reserve. But for us, technically, the 4% is only 450,000. So
it doesn't really get you anything.
Yeah. Technically.
Thank you for that presentation.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions or comments you have for doing that before?
So just to we are compliant with grade span phase out and we are compliant with TK phase out, correct?
And it would require no.
Everything else is,
signed contracts. The others would be
contingent.
contingent.
Okay.
Could you walk through what that contingency looks like? Whether that's, we have to get some sort of agreement, a contract between us and the board of the other schools, all 7 of them, right?
Yes.
Okay, and that is something that is done. It's just we haven't done it locally for a while.
Correct. How long do you think that would take?
The question was how long would it take? It can be done relatively quickly. I've put, I've communicated with other superintendents. I haven't put anything in writing. I felt it was a bit cart before the horse. So I don't have any agreements in place other than, I've had communications. I know one district was considering the agreement at a board meeting tonight. Another district is waiting for you all to make a decision, and then we'll review the contract. Another district again is waiting for your decision, and then we'll talk to the board and make their decision on whether or not they want to enter into it. So it was, it's not just a piece of paper that they go home and they sign. They have to talk to their boards. The boards would have to agree to enter into it. Yeah. So, but it can be done relatively quickly. So it's a matter of the superintendent signing off and then taking it to the board for approval at their next meeting.
I mean, and the two that I'm looking at where we're not deficit spending at all is the grade span phase out and the middle school phase out. One's compliant, one's.
I don't think you want to try.
I was just.
The recorder's way down there too.
And the recorder and the turning it on and docking it. So what I was saying is the two, just that's in front of me that I'm looking at, that's not any deficit spending. One we're compliant, one's contingent. Thank you. I was going to say conditional. Is the middle school phase out and the grade span phase out?
Do you have anything you'd like to?
Yeah, I'm just
Okay.
talking out
All
loud.
right, we're
We
just.
need to talk, so we
Yeah.
need to work things out amongst ourselves.
I appreciate that, Sarah. I mean, I know all of us,
Sarah.
all of our conversations, I know all of you would like to keep these kids as long as possible. I respect all of you, so I don't mean anything by that, but I'm the only one on the board that has actually had to move my kids. It was my choice, my husband and my choice. We moved them 3 times. So I do understand, even when it was our choice to do it, what that meant. And to this day, I wonder how things might have been different if we hadn't done that. So this is really hard. So the two that I'm looking at are the TK phase out, even though it says $700 and some thousand deficit spending in the 3rd year. I'm wondering what things could be done to reduce that deficit spending. And the other one I'm looking at is the 4-8 phase out.
I don't see that.
I don't know. I think we're talking about what are the sorts of.
Jennifer, what are your?
We haven't talked about this before. We haven't looked at.
We haven't talked about this before. This is a board meeting that we have in public, so these are things that we have to consider. And so I think as part of that is just where do our comfort levels lie, where our priorities, in terms of how many staff and students can we retain, with also looking at where's the budget threshold that makes the most sense. I, for myself, I'm looking at, how can we retain and look at our staff and our students in a way that makes the transition as smooth and as possible. And I do
think about those kids who are going to be having to make a couple of transitions, pretty quickly. And so looking at a 4-8 phase out or a 5-8 phase out, it seems to make sense to me in terms of these are kids who have been here for 5 or 6 years, who are connected, who have been able to really put down some roots here. And that seems to be the one that I'm most pulled towards this now.
I agree on that, Adam. I'm trying to talk loud so I don't have to talk in this microphone.
I think it's probably best. I'm having trouble hearing.
Are you?
Yeah.
And then you turn it off when you hand it to me?
No.
I agree with you on that. I'm looking at that 4-8, that red number in the middle there scares me a little bit. We get to that point, that's spending. That's why I'm not even looking at the TK one. That just is way beyond my comfort level for deficit spending. You don't see that in 5-8 as bad. But I get what you're saying about the schools and having that in the back of my mind, the 3 different schools that you talked about earlier. So I've got that 4-8 in front. You don't want it.
Oh, I'm good. I do have something to say though. I believe that option 1 is too abrupt, and the savings that you get aren't. I feel like they could be covered with a less abrupt option. So I would suggest as a team we just start to take certain ones out of play, because that one is so abrupt and so impactful.
So and to be clear, though, option 1 is the middle school phase out.
That's
correct.
middle school phase.
Okay. Are we all in agreement?
So are we all on the same page with that? I think we all agree that that one moves too fast. So
Are we going to take number 1 out of play?
Yes.
Yeah, take 1 out of play.
That was the middle school phase out option. That says nobody continues on from kinder through fifth. It's only the same concentration.
So now that I've seen the numbers, option 3,
which is
that is the contingent 4-8 phase out. That one is tumultuous from a staffing standpoint, and has a pretty large reduction of the ending fund balance in 29-30. So I don't feel that for the attempt to extend the 4th, it doesn't really, it creates a lot more staffing implications, and it costs a lot of over $1 million between or maybe not $1 million, but a significant amount of money as compared to the other options after 5 years. Make that statement. And then
You're talking about 5-8 right there.
I'm talking about 4-8.
Oh, the 4-8, okay.
Number 3.
So just to be clear, the 4-8, you're talking about looking at, you're comparing the end of fund balance between the grade span phase out and the 4-8 phase out, the difference between the 3,276,000 and the 2,634,000. Those are the 2 numbers you're looking at as you're thinking about this here.
Correct.
So John, I think that's interesting because the ending fund balance is 2.6 million, right?
Correct.
That's still better than our ending fund balance this year.
But if you compare it to the 5-8 phase out.
Well, true, but we're not trying to make money. I mean,
We also have a third less staff at that point in time, so payroll's smaller, and that money does get us far.
My points were it's disruptive to staff, and it's a significant cost impact. So if you want to compare it to now and this funding, that's ending. It does, you know what I mean? We're not doing LCF anymore.
Yeah.
right.
And our numbers are going to look significantly different. So we get ourselves out of the red and into the black.
Right. We have an opportunity to bank more funds into our reserve if we go 5-8.
Right.
But if we do 4-8, we still have a higher ending fund balance in 2030 than we do right now.
Not disagreeing with you.
Okay.
And then on item 5, my opinion is that's
Which
not,
one is that?
that is the non-contingent TK phase out.
Okay, yeah.
That one, I don't know how you make that pencil. The full effects are not known for, say, 9 years. You're depleting resources. It's an attrition style staff phase out that just loses a few every year. So I don't know if that's beneficial or not.
I don't. I do not think that TK phase out is beneficial at all.
Okay. So would we agree that this is non-sustainable and we can take this one out of play?
Well, I'm still interested in it. I would still want to know exactly what was going on, but I understand that I'm in the minority here, and if you don't, if it's a non-starter for everybody else, I get it.
Adam, you haven't weighed in on this.
No, I haven't. I'm very uncomfortable with projecting out into the future that large of a deficit spending into the future with no resolution in sight of the end of this budget. With some of the other ones with the 4-5 phase outs, 4 and 5 phase out, it does look like at the end of that there is some stability in those. Whereas in this one, it doesn't show, at least after these 5 years, there's any sort of landing spot for this. Other than the county coming in and saying, you need to make changes, the state coming in and said, why do you have all these students? That's what they would do. If the state came in and we were in receivership, the state would come in and say, we can still fix it.
And that's what I think is so weird, right? Because the state is the one that is telling us that with our property tax in this district, we should be able to educate 671 students. So they're going to come in and say, well, 300 or 200 of these kids are out of district, so kick them out. I don't understand.
I can answer that for you.
They're talking out of both sides of the mouth.
Educate them based on the current amounts right now, which are heavily lower than any of our neighbors. It's the same funding we have now.
I get
That's why they're like, hey, yeah, I know you guys get like, 60% of what everybody else does, but you should be able to educate that same amount of kids, even though you're using your property taxes to fund it. That's terrible logic on the state's part, not you.
No.
Okay, so are we in agreement to take this out?
Well, are we making a decision on this tonight? Have we decided that we're going to vote on this tonight?
I believe we are. It's on the table, and I think now that we've made the decision, I think we need to give parents, teachers, and everybody a decision on which way we're going.
Is there the ADA threshold, these pink columns and cells, has that, like, based upon current tax revenue projections, I heard the threshold changed, right?
Could you speak a little bit about that?
So essentially, when we started looking at all this a few years ago, the threshold was 620 students, 580. Now with property taxes increasing, our enrollment would be 670 students, or 671, and ADA of 620. So I like to say 671 or 670 because you can have 671 students and one student takes a long vacation, kicks us into community funded, or that student actually comes to school and keeps us in LCFS. So one student could be going in and out of community funded. And then that plays a part into how often
reflected in these reports that we got.
Yes, those they are. So that by doing that, we get funded twice a year. So if we're in and out, we only get funded twice a year.
So just to clarify for everybody, if we are in community funded, we get paid from the county twice a year when property taxes are paid in October and March. We get a large chunk, but then we have to manage that wisely over those course of the years. And if we run out in February, we have to go to our reserves or we have to go to the county to get a loan.
We'll hit our reserves before we go to the county. If for some reason we mismanage, we get a full new parking lot for $2 million, and then we need to borrow money from the
Then we would do that.
Yeah.
Just
Throwing
it out there that a district that is unfamiliar with this situation finds themselves with a large sum of cash in December, and then
let's suppose that we get so happy with, we get $4 million coming in. We've never seen $4 million coming in 1 month. We get $4 million coming in April. Then we have April all the way until November with that $4 million. We have to make it last. If you don't make it last, then you start touching your reserve. And if for some reason we go through our $4 million in April through November and our reserve, then that's when we have to go to the county and borrow money to make payroll.
We need a budget like a farmer, basically. You only get paid a couple times. You got to live within your means. And we already do that anyway. The payment schedule changes a little bit.
Or like district employees, you get paid once a month and you have to budget out for 30 days.
There you go.
Yeah.
So
So, are we in agreement to take this out?
I am not comfortable looking at that last number, knowing that there is still years of deficit spending ahead of this.
Adam, is that it's hard to know what's going to happen.
Absolutely.
What scares me is that we could make a decision based on these numbers, but we don't know if 50% of our interdistrict families are going to say, I'm out, I'm out now. We don't know.
I don't know. And we can only
I
work with our best budgeting that we have, though. Each family is going to make their own best choice for themselves. But we have to work with our understanding of where we're at now and where we're going in the future. So,
are there any other models that we need to look at? Different types.
I mean, I think these are pretty certain. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 models.
I have seen the ones that I think I have not thought of other ones yet.
So the thought, let's go over some of the basic thought process here for some of these options. So is the thought that, the younger ones are more adaptable to a new school, would go to a different elementary, let's just say Toro. And what we're trying to do when we look at 5 through 8 or 4 through 8 is the older ones that have more of a history, and they're allowed to continue because they're more kind of ingrained and such. Overall, there's never going to be one fair way unless you deficit spend. But I'm just trying to talk about the 4 and 8 and 5 and 8.
I think so. I think that's the point of that you stated there, is that the students who have been with us for potentially, if they started here in kindergarten, they've been here for 6 years. They've been here, and then they're now in 5th grade, they've been here for 6 years. Has definitely had more relationships, more time to bond with their peers, with their teachers, and that transition that they would have to make would be a greater transition. Something that they've done, and then they're going to have to make a transition again in another year when they go to middle school. Whereas maybe a first grader, got 5 more years, you might just say, I'm gonna go get my kid established at a high school right now. And I don't know if I want to do that or didn't want to stay through third, but I look at the relationships and the part that these, older students maybe are part of in our schools, might be harder for them than a younger student. I don't know if that's true, but that's where I think it might be working.
My experience of my kids transitioning into different schools is that the older they are, the harder it is. So 2nd grade is better than 5th grade. And also parents are more involved at that point. Parents have a bigger role to play in the friendships of their kids when they're in 2nd grade than when they're in 6th grade.
So I think what I'm feeling here as that I just move on is I know where my preferences are. I just say that's probably the order of boundary. But also want to say if there's more information that we feel like we need in order to make one of these decisions, this would be a good time for us to ask for that as well. So, and you guys think of any other information that would help you narrow this down over improve your thought process and decision making at this point?
No, I think it's laid out. It's not easy. This is not easy. And but we have these presented to us in front of us. The information's there, the numbers are there. I don't need any information. Do you, John?
The things that, okay, so I would just say, item 5, totally get it. That would, I understand where folks coming from.
I'm sorry, wait, hold on.
The
Which
non-contingent TK.
TK pays out.
TK pays.
Okay. Thank you.
The financial situation on that and effect on staff on that one that has been discussed, it just seems to prolong this thing too long, and it keeps us in this status of like limbo. And from what I've always heard is you're really only good, even 3-year projections are tough, right? You start to lose relevancy and accuracy after a 3-year projection. So this one takes it so far out. The unknowns are great. So again, that's my opinion on that. Anything that's contingent, let alone where other districts, no matter what, they need to approve the interdistrict transfers on a mutual basis, then the board gets, there's too many unknowns on that right now. So if you selected that, you would be hedging that these numbers were true based upon you getting board approval, which has been solicited, and we don't have any approvals as of today. So from that standpoint, I wouldn't think that we have enough information to make a decision tonight on anything that's contingent.
So you would like to hear more from the staff and from other boards about putting these contracts on paper before.
How can we agree to something where we don't have agreements? And
I don't think we can do agreements first until we make a decision. I mean, we made one decision that we are going community funded. So
I get
now,
yeah. So with all due respect to interdistrict transfer families, they have to make a decision by January 31st. Is there a possibility that we see how those evolve, those agreements with the boards? Maybe you sleep on these numbers and then we come back in early January to review.
I would like to be able to give those people something so that they're not blindly making decisions. I would like to have as much done for us as possible so that they have a informed decision to go and make, as opposed to just, well, they might do this, they might do that, they might do this. Like, I would like to have them I think we owe them some sort of idea of what to expect, not just having to make a decision based upon, well, I might.
I agree.
I
don't think that's fair.
So I don't know if that's fair to them and their position of not knowing what to expect. Because it's just a matter of, I think, how do we want to handle the unexpected part of it.
Well, and I appreciate what John said about not how hard it is to look more than 3 years out, because we've done that so many times where it's totally different 3 years out. Like
Things
what
change.
we thought
They
is
do.
not what is going on, and that's what makes me that makes it so hard, because we don't know what's going to be going on in 3 years. You know, the state, if it goes into this huge deficit, it could be worse. Property taxes could change. We don't know. But we're making a decision that these families are going to make. You know, they're going to decide by the end of January what they're doing. I mean, I know I'm the only one that is more comfortable with risk on this TK phase out, only because we welcome these families into our district and they came, you know, with open arms to enrich our district. And I want to make sure that we're giving every opportunity to how we could make this work. Even as I say that, I don't want to put us on a path to bankruptcy.
Right.
Absolutely. So if you want, you know, from my point of view, I'm at this point, if you wanted to vote tonight, I would be voting on the 4-8. And if we waited, I would ask for a little bit more information on the TK. And now to your point about the contingent, getting these contracts signed, or maybe this is a question for Gina, why would a district not sign the agreement?
The question is, why would a district not sign the agreement? I don't have a good answer for you. I don't know. It doesn't change what we currently know of our interdistrict agreements. It memorializes it into a maximum 5-year contract that says we set the terms that you have to renew annually. Doesn't change anything else. So I don't know why a district wouldn't, but they might not.
Then if they didn't, we would almost just revert to the grade scan phase out.
So any, just trying to figure out how we're moving ahead here. Any one that was contingent, so if we did the 4-8 or the 5-8, which is contingent on other districts, any motion we pass tonight would have to be contingent on those approvals coming in January or February or somewhere like that. Okay, so this motion would be at least giving them, the families that I'm speaking of, some sort of idea of this is what we're planning. And yes, it is still contingent upon the other thing, but it's perspective. So
Okay, so I mean, I think I do have a question.
oh, sorry.
So my only question would be, if you move forward with a contingency model and we put the agreements out, I communicate with superintendents, I send the agreements out, ask for their participation. We have 7 districts that send kids. I get 6 signed, 1 non.
It affects your mom.
So my question, I think to you as a board, you have to consider is would you move forward with all of those other contracts? And honor those.
There's nothing
that changes. The agreements are still in place, but you'd have to make a decision on moving forward in terms of would you then honor annual renewals or not? It would change our behavior as a district.
Can you speak a little more on that?
So if we have agreements in place, it's an annual renewal. These agreements are contingent on these contracts in place, which would mean we would exercise our right to deny an interdistrict transfer at the conclusion of the year. If we deny contracts for 6 of 7 districts, because one district is not, so what we're allowing the students of said district to stay while we're eliminating the other districts. So I just think that's something you need to consider as a
Well,
board.
that's why I said we should, if it's gonna be contingent, you would want to wait till those are reflected.
So all of them.
Yeah, whatever people are willing to commit to this year.
So
Well, and is that what we're doing? Are we going off of the record? Because if that's, then we have created our own phase out model. We are not going off of the recommendation of the committee. And we are gonna then hold that off until another month to let these families know once we get the contingency in place. That's what I'm hearing,
Well,
right?
right now,
Because the two options that the committee brought to us, we are turning those down.
I'm not turning down option 2 because it's the cleanest of them all.
I agree. The grade span is we are compliant. It is the cleanest, and so I guess that's what is that what we're doing? Is that what we're talking about now? Now we
Well, that's what this is
yeah.
all about.
No, I know.
Yeah,
I'm just
you're right.
so, and I'm not trying to yell. I'm just trying to talk loud so I don't have to use the microphone.
I hear you.
Yeah,
Right.
don't say yelling for yelling.
Right. I just don't want to use the microphone.
Sorry, let me ask one real quick question.
Sure.
Was either the phase out presented to the committee? Was this something that was ever given to the committee, the 4, 5
No.
through 8 committee?
No.
So they never even saw this. This
No.
is a new idea.
Those are new ideas.
These are, yeah.
Okay.
The 4, 5, TK, the 4 through 8, 5 through 8, and TK was not a committee option. Correct. Okay.
John,
So-
sorry, I cut you off.
It was
TK was.
discussed at the committee, but it was not an option.
It was not in the
Not
letter.
recommended
It
as
was
well.
not recommended in the letter that
I
we
was just
got.
asking, did they even see the 4 through 8 or the 5 through 8? Which
No, those were ideas that came out.
John's outside the door.
So one more point, because there's implications to this that keep coming to my brain. So on option 5, which is the TK phase out, what you're doing when you push this out, the data becomes less credible, and what it does is it stalls out our process, which we would like to move forward to CMA. What can we do for staff? What can we do for maintenance? We're kicking the can down the road so far that our ability to act will be stalled as this plays itself out. That's my opinion.
I don't disagree with you. I think that is true. If you're looking at some of the projects we need to do or other changes we need to make, that would delay either of those. So I think it's, for me, I feel like those are a good compromise between our helping as many students as we can, because the bonds that they already have, and then being able to financially be responsible for their future.
Which one? You're talking 4,
The 4, 8, or 5.
4, 8, or 5.
Well, I mean,
They're both going to allow us to preserve more students in the district, allow more kids to finish out, but also will both of them end with a higher funding balance than we started.
So we're throwing 4 to 8 back in the bank.
well,
I don't know that.
I don't know. I don't know to move forward, how to, does a motion get put on the table to, okay, if we're in agreement, then we're gonna, do this, so we can let our families know, but make it known that we're contingent. John, how do we do that? It has to be.
I think we've already decided that until you know. So you won't know until those districts who have the agreements, they have the emails that have not responded. One board is meeting tonight about it. How can you make them vote?
Well, but how do we not put something on the table to let our families know?
Well,
Don't
we
we owe
know
that?
we know we're not doing the most abrupt thing. You know, if the decision has to be made tonight, I would only move on the grade span.
The complaint.
Yeah.
Yes, the one that's complaint. To approve that one. To approve that one.
Yeah, and the reason for that, like, would be the contingency factors that are unknown are taken away. It's not perfect, and obviously there's a cost out there for those families that have to move their kids right away. That's your current third graders and your fifth graders. But overall, it allows the group as a whole to stay the longest as possible, from kindergarten all the way up through, let's just say, the sixth graders. Sixth grader. It's overall the least impactful for all students. Otherwise, you're choosing based upon reasons discussed earlier that maybe the younger ones don't have as much history and what have you. But that is the cleanest of them all without being contingent.
I mean, clean is an interesting word. I don't, I get that it pencils out really well, that way, but if I'm a parent of a third grader, maybe I'm thinking, what the heck? I'm leaving now. I'm not, why would I go to fourth grade and have my child know one more year? Like,
Based on the other two options, so they're leaving anyway.
well, no, but it is different if you're in fourth
No, it's
grade.
not.
But
Let her finish, John.
I'm just saying, and I'm not just looking at the numbers. So please don't interpret it that way.
I'm trying to maybe I'm trying to understand what Hope is saying. But
Yeah, I mean, if you're a parent of a third grader, well, if you're a parent of a third grader that's going into fourth grade, it seems like you've got to make a decision. Am I going to put my child through 2 more years of uncertainty, knowing that in fifth grade,
that's what I'm trying to say. Third graders at the grade span.
They end at Toro.
A third grader would not be coming back to fourth grade.
right? But are we talking about all grade spans? So we're talking about fourth grade too.
No, he's talking about the grade span phase out that's compliant.
So you finish at the school you're at. So if you're at Toro, when
Right.
you get your third,
Right.
then you have to
Right.
Washington. When you're
Right.
fifth, you get to finish till fifth grade.
Right.
Then fifth grade, you have to.
Okay, so third graders aren't going.
That's
to.
when you
Okay,
finish
fine.
the school.
But
Kind of
you're
like a
supposed to
natural
say-
You're a
transition.
fourth grader. Okay, but if you're okay, I'm sorry, I did get that wrong.
I
Your
was
parents-
grumpy when I said that to you, and I apologize.
That's the wrong. No, but okay, but I was wrong. So, but I'm thinking about it then a fourth grade parent. They've got to make a decision whether they move now or whether they wait 2 years and their child goes for 2 years. They're not going to get to stay with these kids.
Right.
And that's,
And just looking at third grade alone, between the three options that are kind of we're looking at, grade is not moving on.
right, sorry. Yes, you're right.
Oh, yeah, right.
Private school applications are different.
I'm sorry. That's not.
I'm just saying, we gotta make a decision tonight.
We don't.
For respect.
For sure. No, whatever.
Oh.
I get it, but you're not.
So what would you be comfortable with, right, John?
If when in the absence of the board agreements, the non-contingent grade span is what I would support.
The grade span phase out. The grade span phase out. Okay. And I get it. I get I see that. That is, do you want to make a motion on that and see where we're at? Or or do we want to have any more discussion on that?
If the intent is not to pursue the status of the other board commitments, then I don't have any other option to go with what is known tonight. That's the logic of my decision.
Well, yes, and I appreciate that, John. I feel like we made the decision to go to basic aid. So everybody knows we're going to basic aid and that's over. Means we're not accepting any new inter-district transfers. Yes, parents are going to have to make a decision, but I don't want to make a decision prematurely because we don't know about the contingency plans. Right. And I don't want to, foreclose the opportunity that a fourth grader could stay in our district just because we don't know about these contingency plans. So I think parents have more information tonight than they did yesterday.
I would agree with that. It's not going to be, a lot of options have abruptness to them, all except for the one that's non-sustainable. We know we're not going very abrupt with the option one. What is a realistic time frame you could do a special meeting to review status of those as related to options 2, 3, and 4, which are grade span phase out, 5-8 phase out, and 4-8 phase out?
It's a hard question to answer at this point. I'd have to try to get a hold of all the superintendents in the next 2 days before everybody goes out for Christmas break to see if I can get any kind of an answer. I know Saline City's meeting tonight, so I'm supposed to have an answer from them by the end of the week. Spreckles is waiting for your decision. Monterey Peninsula is waiting for your decision. Alisal was having their attorney review it as a matter of form, but no answer.
Yeah,
I know. I mean, I agree with both. I like the fact that the grade span phase out is, we don't have to, we're following EDCO, there's nothing we have to do. It's basically, and it gives people an answer right now. But at the same time, I'm sensitive to the fact that for kids who've been here, and they're at that, they've been here for a couple years, and so it'd be nice. Yeah, it'd be nice to have, I guess it's just how realistic is it to hear back from these, that's what, I guess that's your concern, right? Is just how realistic is it to really.
All it does take a couple that don't agree.
Right, and then
your model changes based on what you're assuming here tonight.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so if the worst case scenario with it moving ahead with either of the 4 or 5 phase out options is we make a decision contingent upon the district's approving these, and if they don't, then we have to come back.
Do a special.
We'll have to come back and
we have to do something and change our plan because our moms are no longer.
This is my point.
Could we make that motion that we accept the 4-8 phase out contingent on getting
the contingent?
contingency?
I would like to do that.
I don't think we
John,
can make a motion
on contingency, right?
What do I have to do?
Something we can do.
Yeah, anything that's contingent to say, contingent on the contingency, let's vote on it.
But I think that I mean that's then we're putting in motion what in our motion.
We've already
we're putting in motion what, so we can let parents know, we can let families know. I mean, I think we owe that to them. Like, I don't want to leave here tonight without making some sort of decision. And it sounds like we're all kind of on board with that.
I'll go ahead. I'll make a motion that we approve grade span phase out because it's non-contingent. It's known. It meets all the terms of that code. And it spreads that whole wave of who can stay and who has to go right now. It spans it from grade 1 through grade 7. Whereas the other options don't allow that for Toro at all and 3rd grade. There's your motion.
Is there a second?
I'm sorry, I thought he was gonna make a motion to do 4 through 8 with the contingency, but I guess you are doing the grade span thing.
Forget the 4 through 8 staffing issue.
Right. You're right. You're right. Okay, I will second that motion.
This is majority vote. So this is not a roll call vote, it's just a majority vote. There is, no need to put it into this, so, but I think for clarity, we probably should.
One more time. So for the grade span phase out, then, if you're in kindergarten, you're going through 3rd grade.
Correct.
For the 4 through 8 phase out, if you're in kindergarten, you're moving to a new school.
Correct.
Yeah, so this. If you're in 4th, you're finishing this, so it's natural transitions, the natural transitions at your school to the next school in our school.
It's a hard one because obviously that helps the kindergartners, but I really feel for the 4th graders. So, yeah.
We're gonna. I think for clarity and allowing people to hear each person speak on this, we should, even though it's not a roll call vote, we should take time to individually say what we're thinking about doing. So, John, do you?
All right, I don't do that. Just to recap, the committee that studied it came up with this as an option. They spent months on it. A lot of analysis was done. There's a cost to it, no matter what we do. We're not going to get away from the fact that by our lack of proper funding from the state, that we're moving to our property. There's a cost to it, and it's terrible. Just want to reiterate that it's terrible for the families that get affected. We have to find some common ground and some kind of balance. So we're with the choices presented here tonight. We don't have, in my opinion, we don't have what we need to make a proper decision on. This one meets all the requirements and is non-contingent for ed code. And in my opinion, if you're taking the schools as a whole, it allows a bigger span of the population to remain in the district to make a transition period. And that is why I made the motion.
That's a yes for that. Just to clarify.
It's an aye.
I appreciate that, John, and that makes sense. My perspective is different, and I'm about continuity for those 4th and 5th graders. I think that's a hard age. So I respect your vote, but I would be a no.
I tend to agree with you, John, on everything you said. And it does. I think it gives a broader range. And we are within ed code. We are compliant. I am a yes. I respect Hope, what you had to say. I respect John. I respect Tara. All of you guys I learned so much from you, so thank you.
And I like, I'm a yes on the grade span phase out. I like the fact that it's a natural transition to allow the kids to stay to finish out their time at the school that they expected to, when they expected to transition on, that's when they will. So I'm a yes. Oh, sorry.
So thank you all for all of the hard work that you put in from all of this for the staff, the committee, all the parents who are been involved with this. This one of the things that makes this I think one of the things that has been
positive, very few things have been positive about this is knowing that whatever the decisions that were made here tonight, I do feel the board and the staff and the community involved is going to be now given a chance to look to the future and see and plan and work together for that. That's one of the things I think the district has done well for years is how we can work together on this. So everybody is knowing that we're all working for what we think is the best for our students here. And with that being said, I would be okay, and I think that having a motion that allows parents to leave tonight with some sort of direction, yeah, it might be contingent upon other districts. It might be contingent upon, the decisions they're making, but they would have a direction that we are moving while still allowing the students who have been here the longest, who have formed the deepest connections to stay for longer. I would be okay with that, and because of that, I think I would have to say my preference is still the 4-8 or the 5-8. If the 4-8 is uncomfortable because of the differences in funding, those big elements at the end, or the unlegal staff, and the 5-8, avoids both of those. I think it will count, but thank you for that already decided. So, with that, I think it's okay, thank you all very much. At this point, I think this with a motion for adjourn.
Second.
Everything in favor? Aye. Thank you all for coming.
I'm all